Hey guys, it's Matt. Um, in this video, I'm going to attempt to get you to feel a whole lot better, and I think I'll be successful in my attempt. I'm not going to tell jokes, do dumb stand-up routine, or warped faces like Nathaniel Laviolette, Kid Charlemagne. We'll do that sometime, but this is simply making sure you understand the situation that you're really in. And that's not dark, just the opposite. When you understand the situation you're truly in, as bad as in dark and as grave and as heavy and stressful as this seems, and it is off the charts from certain perspectives, it's an absolute joke. And if I told you you were in a Sims game, would you get stressed out? No. And this notion of what I think this reality system is all about. It is not constructed to make myself feel better. Absolutely not. I believe wholeheartedly in everything I'm going to tell you. And if you believe it or you start to see it the way I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. We've got it down to a half page now. Once you can see through all the bullshit, it's pretty simple. It takes all the stress and the weight off. Not all, because I'm getting emails from people. Let's do the negative first. Getting emails, it is, if you're, the pressure that the jobs and the employment and the bosses are putting on people to rent the movie or comply, it is off the charts. I get emails from all over the world. If somebody, just in terms of the general situation, not the stress of compliance or you may lose your job, and just in general, if somebody were to even sit me down 2 years ago and say, let me tell you what the creeps are going to be able to pull off by 2021, I would have never believed it. I would have never thought that what I would call the one world system could do that. So if you're close to it, it's as dark, it's as stressful. I mean, you almost understand why people want to just go, literally do a Neo, but it's real. But that's the thing, it's not real. Do a Neo and just try to go rooftop to rooftop, but boom, they're not going to make it. You can understand people with that mindset, but you shouldn't. I mean, you're way too close to it if you have that mindset. You're way too close to it. So, how many? I'm going to reiterate what I've been saying for about 2 years now. This world's not very real. And the last part of the Vanessa VA most recent video was very interesting. Even I was even listening to that. My definition of this world isn't very real. I was able to move take the push pin out and put it back in a that's even more farther down the scale of this world isn't very real. And I was pretty far down the scale. And guys, at the end of the scale is not the dark. What they want you to believe is at that end of the scale. If the world isn't very real, they want you to believe at this end is Elon Musk's and Ray Kurzweil's brain chip and the literal matrix and people in pods and scorched skies and a sentient internet. And no, that's not what's waiting all the way down the sliding scale if you believe the world isn't very real. I believe we did choose to come here as souls and spirits and get into this avatar. And this simulation could be and likely as a much more natural simulation. It doesn't have to be if you slide down the scale in your thought process of the world isn't very real. It doesn't, you don't have to push into the dark parts of bad sci-fi movies. It doesn't have to be technology the way we understand it. It could be what's behind the simulation is something I don't think we'll ever understand in this avatar, and it could be much more normal and natural and good. It doesn't have to be dark and bad. That's what the movies are out to do. That's what Neil of the Grass-Fed Bison is out to do with your perception of when Matt says the world isn't very real, oh, then he wants us believing right alongside the same things of Elon Musk and Ray Kurzweil. No, that's how they'll try to hijack it at the very end. It could be a much more, or likely is a much more natural system. It still is the whole reality system is a trick of the senses, And I'll talk a bit about what that last lecture in the Vanessa VA video was talking about. And I immediately related to the Monica Bellucci scene from the Twin Peaks remake. Um, I wrote it down because I always confuse this one. Maybe you know how I can just recite lines from movies and things like that. This one I never get right. To me, it means it's very close to the truth. There's something that's I don't know. It's always a little foggy for me for some reason. I have to write it down, and maybe there's a reason for that. Because of all lines, this is the one I should remember cold, like I can remember recite half the lines from Sling Blade. So maybe that means this is close to the truth. But the Monica Bellucci scene in the Twin Peaks remake, we are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream. I'll talk, if you're not getting all of it now, I mean, I'll talk more of it about it in a bit. And then in just a few minutes, we'll go back to the absolute basics because sometimes I can rant and go on sidebars and things like that. I'll bring it back to the point in a moment. But I related that to that famous scene in the Twin Peaks remake to exactly what was being discussed in the last part of the Vanessa VA video. And just to summarize, if people are saying, "Well, I didn't see that," summarize that. The person I've heard her present this lecture before, or this individual basically talks about the fact that since we only have the senses to work with, there can be no proof whatsoever, in any way that anything is real outside of sensory perception. So it even takes the notion of the double slit experiment and moves it even farther down towards matrix, if that's even possible. So it basically says the notion of the double slit experiment is part of the general reality lie, because when science will say whether you I don't mean to there's people there are certain people that are still triggered by the double slit experiment. It's not important for the purposes of this presentation. Um, Science will say, but we'll move off this in just a moment, that of course it's everything's waveform. Nothing exists as a particle or as real until in the presence of a conscious observer or observed by real consciousness. Whatever, you've all heard that. Okay, but this notion presented in the back part of the Vanessa VA video, it takes it even farther because it's saying there's probably nothing outside yourself or your own perception. The double slit experiment, it's like, oh, everything's waveform, but then we make it real. That's reinforcing the general lie that, oh, there is no apple there, and I look and then there's an apple. Consciousness made it real. No, it takes even farther. There's nothing there at all. You, how is there an apple there? Just because you can see it, you know? So it relates. That's the basis of it. And you could argue with a room full of people for hours, and they would never be able to prove that anything exists outside of sensory perception. Okay, but it relates right back to the bizarro, strange Twin Peaks Monica Bellucci scene. We're like the dreamer who dreams, who then lives inside the dream. And then the big question, it's who is the dreamer? She says. And I'm not big on Twin Peaks. Um, I've tried to go there over time. It's bizarro land to me. Um, you know, it's so confusing on one side. I don't think it's worth struggling through it for the reality truth drops on the other side. But this scene comes up over and over and is very interesting. So let's if in case I'm losing anybody, let's talk about what this Monica Bellucci presentation of Twin Peaks is saying related to what the lecture of the back part of the Vanessa VA video is saying, and then we'll come back and I'll try to bring it back to this current situation. If you really believe you're in a Sims game, would you be stressed out? If you believe it was 1/quarter of a second, step into the closet, step out, would you be stressed out? You're always going to carry a degree of stress, worry, anxiety in this reality system because that's the limitations of being in the avatar and it's part of the experience. But please remember to back up and look down at it. One thing, let me present this idea, or we'll go back to the concentric reality rings for a second before talking about the we are the dreamer that we are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream. We'll go to that second. Whether I don't know if I can explain this exactly, but I think most of you will agree with my general thoughts regarding the concentric reality rings. Remember, I made that presentation, I don't know, 6 months back, and this is it's related, but a little bit different. Um, the closest, the closest thing that's here in this reality, and again, let me just pause and go back again. The reason this exercise is necessary is because of how stressful, dark, how much anxiety, the situation we're in now is 1,000 times over what the 7-Eleven presentation is. Nobody would have ever believed that, quote, the George Bush creatures, could have put us in this situation. But it is still a comedy clown show when you back up far enough and look down at it. It's desperate for your attention, worry, stress, and anxiety and fear. So don't feed it. That's what it wants. The best way not to feed it is to step out of it and look down and see what it is, which is it's not worth this. What did General Behringer say in War Games? I can remember this shit. I can't remember the most important quote about reality, the Monica Bellucci quote. General Behringer says, "I wouldn't give a squirt of no, what do you say? I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought it would do any good." We'd do anything that we could, but if we get to the situation where the reality system wants us to say, well, "I'll do anything to bring the old world back." No, we're not. We don't want to go back. We instinctively know we wouldn't go back and trade what we've learned about this and learned more importantly about ourselves. We wouldn't trade it to get the old reality back. It wants that Faustian deal. No, we wouldn't trade it. And if you wouldn't trade it, therefore by definition, you prefer the situation you're in now. So why are you stressed, angry, and worried about it? Okay. So the concentric reality circles. The main point, and I'll try to be as brief as possible about this, is your current reality bubble. What we have here is the most real. Is the most real. Now, to me, I'll end up agreeing with that lecture at the end of Vanessa's video that none of it's real to me, right? None of it's real. But relatively, what's inside the local reality bubble for us is the most real. Or just if you want to even say, for the purpose of this discussion, it's real, which to me it's not, but you know what I mean. But the point is, as you move outward towards what I call the screen, then it completely breaks down as not real. So even though I'm saying we're in a reality system that in general isn't real, I'm saying it's more real in your local reality bubble. Therefore, and I better just get to the end soon in case I'll lose people. Therefore, the idea is to always operate as small as possible, as local as possible. So I'm not describing this properly. As you move outward, it gets less and less real. So let's just jump all the way to the outer edge, the screen itself, which isn't worth one drop of anxiety, stress, analysis. It's not worth it anymore. The screen itself. So it's presentations about Russians hacked the elections, and I mean just constant the summer of confusion, the fall of confusion. What directives are going to come down on federal workers? So this, I mean, just the constant presentation of politics, geopolitics, the news, economics. Now, if you were waiting at the ropes of the White House and you were on a tour, and there is something called George Bush who would probably walk by you. If you were there on a tour at the time in 1999, and I still did that before the big day, there's something that would walk by you. I don't think that's an illusion of this reality. I think there's something in an avatar called George Bush, and I'm not describing this properly. And maybe I'm not describing it properly at all, but it's not. You need to, even if I'm wrong about it, as the rings work outward from your own localized reality. Your girlfriend comes in the room, your wife comes in the room, your boyfriend, your cat, your dog. As you move outward, even if I'm wrong about it being less and less real, and I believe I'm accurate about that, I don't know exactly how to describe that. It's not worth your the outer edges of the reality ring that is a complete clown show, deception, fraud, lie that wants to completely hide you from the true nature of yourself. It begs for your energy, your emotion. It's louche. It begs for your anxiety, worry. It begs for your analysis. We need to cut it off completely. So to me, I do believe that as you move outward in the rings, that each ring becomes less and less real. And I don't know exactly what that means, but at the minimum, it's not worth giving our energy and attention to. Okay, so the point of all of this is live as locally as possible inside your immediate reality bubble. Because that gets back to living in the now moment and all we have. Okay, that's all we can do as we move through this absolute shit show. All right, let's try to put the whole thing into perspective and um, let's talk about going back to the Monica Bellucci thing and the Dreamer and all that stuff. Very similar presentation in what the back half. I forget the lecture's name, and it was all audio. But basically, the best example that this person used was, and when you hear something, your inner knowing or your inner tuning fork just takes over, and like that's exactly what it is. We just know at this point. We can't always come up with it, but when we hear something, we're like, yeah, that's it. And he said, imagine you're dreaming, and he used Paris, the streets of Paris, as an example. You're dreaming, and when you're in the dream, you believe it's real, and you're on the streets of Paris. So your perception has to be um, from the dreamer's perspective in the streets of Paris and the cafes and the another arch ode to themselves and all that stuff, the Champs Elysees and all that fun stuff. Okay, but all of that's happening inside of a larger consciousness, of course. So the larger consciousness is you dreaming in your bed. So that was the presentation that this person was making, but then I mean it was like, well, that's exactly what Monica Bellucci said in the Twin Peaks remake. We are like the dreamer who dreams on the streets of Paris and then lives inside the dream, right? But then she says, it's like Twin Peaks. Ooh, it's so mystical. Who is the dreamer? Well, in the case of a real dream, the dreamer is you lying on your bed, but the whole reality is a repeating fractal layer on top of layer. Why does whatever the notion of a galaxy is, which is not to me not what science presents, of course, but why that or a solar system and Jupiter why does that look exactly like an atom? It doesn't matter whether you agree with science here or not. There's thousands of these examples of the macro being some reflection of the micro. The reality system, some sort of I don't know, the Mandelbrot set or fractal. But this is this quote or this presentation. It's the same fractal nature of reality. We are like the dreamer who dreams, who lives inside the dream. But then Monica says, "Who is the dreamer?" Well, in the case of on the streets of Paris, you're the dreamer. You're lying in bed. But it's why don't just go one level up to the situation we're in now. Forget the streets of Paris. That's a dream. Well, then it's no different than Inception, the movie Inception. Then here we are now. We are like the dreamer who dreams, and somehow there's little deviants here hijacking this reality system, presenting these things to us. Presented the 2001, and then now they're presenting the sea and the pressure of this and the stress of that, and but okay, we're experiencing it inside. But then who's the larger dreamer? It's still in. What's the next layer up? And to me, it is that simple. And it's not just, Matt, that's a cop out because you can't, that's too simple of an explanation because you're too dumb to figure it out. I don't believe it is. It's all a fractal. There's another layer. Is it, does that, who is the dreamer? We'll never know. We're here. I mean, not many of us, most of us can't have lucid, no, not can't, we all are able to have lucid dreams. I have. I wrote a book about, it's a fun fiction book about lucid dreaming, but I haven't had one for years. I don't know why. I had several years ago. I haven't had one for years. So we can't all become lucid in the dream. And what we're doing here is just a fractal layer up. We're becoming lucid in this dream. That's all it is. So there's another layer. We will, when you're in the dream on the streets of Paris, you're not, you're obviously, you're not, if somebody on this, you're not lucid. No one's going to say, well, who's dreaming you up? You're not going to say some guy on a bed, or if it's me or some girl on a bed. You're not going to say that. You're there. So are we going to know now who the larger dreamer is? No, but call it whatever you want. It's an aspect of yourself, higher self, God, source. Okay, we've been down there. But can't you see? You can just see the fractal nature of it. And if you believe any part of this is correct, then none of this is real. And let's just say you're not buying any part of this bull crap. This bull crap. This bull crap. Just throw it all out. Throw it all out. So over here, if you don't like any of this stuff, then let's just say I could book us into a room. Book us into a room. That's what Schwarzenegger said to Franco Colombo, which is now Colombo. He died Colombo, but he started out Colombo. If he's better than me, he's going to beat me. I book us into a room. If you and I book us into a room, I could explain to you over here for 10 hours how there's no way, even the 7-Eleven event, the 7-Eleven job application event by itself, there's no way normal people could have pulled all that off. You look at the graphs and the charts, and this connects to this, and that, just that by itself. And then what do we have? We have 50 other major events slash reality presentations like the Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We have 50 majors, and then we have 1,000 minors, all pulled off, all no, and I'm saying a minor is the movie Captain Hook. That's a minor. That's not on the level of the Apollo, Gemini, and Mercury space programs in terms of, so every case there, it's just people and secret societies, they pulled it off, and it's always real, it's always a Goldilocks reality. There's so many things that gives it away. It just gives you enough evidence, Matt. So somebody becoming a lucid in their dream as a conspiracy person, it always gives you enough to latch on to it, like Robbie podium moments, but then it's just not quite enough to convince your friends, and it's just not quite enough to convince your family. And then they'll run scripts and say people react to grief differently, Matt. We want a match race. Don't you know that? And it's always Goldilocks reality, even with the C right now. So they make a presentation. Half the truth community is just the big H word. Oh, none of it's real. H, H, H. But then we all have one or two people we're kind of close to that knows a guy, that knows a girl who ran into somebody in a back alley in Atlanta that, oh, the person is really in bad shape. Or everybody, it's just enough. But I'm not saying for us, if for the people around us, it gives them just enough stories where the news presentation then is believed, and it always is operating on this Goldilocks. It's never ending. And so if I book us into the room, I'm gonna explain to you for 10 hours all the events pulled off to the T. Nothing ever exposed. That doesn't expose reality by itself. We could go through all the fake events. We could go right back to the pitcher who was shot. We could go right back to, I mean, we just do one after the other, all just enough realness where your friends and family all buy it. Come on, this whole reality, it's a joke. If you're going to analyze this reality like it's real, this is not the channel for you, please. And I am just incredibly amazed how much of the truth community analyzes the reality as if it's real, as if it's just men and women in secret societies. It blows my mind. Just the fake events and the endless presentations by themselves that all just operate down the middle. How about the Earth system itself? I'm not going back and camping under the coattails of Elon Musk and Neil of the grass-fed bison and what's that other fraud's name? Brian Koch and these people. Or, Mitch Pikachu. I can't, I've got to be careful how I present that. Um, I'm not, it doesn't, it's, I'm not giving any stock to anything they say, but still resort back to their main presentation is another Goldilocks reality. Even what they present, you have this Earth system exactly. It's just close enough to the sun where life can grow. And if it was, and even things like the 24-hour day, no matter what you believe, and it, of course, that endless analysis of what is the shape, but that's exactly the trap that the reality system wants you to fall into. Of course it is. Of course it is. It wants endless. You don't think into your inner knowing. You don't think it wants that endless analysis of less of light beer from Miller, less filling tastes great. Of course it wants that endless analysis. But even the day itself, no matter what you believe or how the system behaves, if let's say it is very hot in Pennsylvania this August, very, very hot. If the sunlight hours was much more than 12 hours, okay, then the temperatures would get up to 120, 130 degrees. They go up, up, up because of the sun is overhead, and then it goes at just at the right time, the sun starts to go away and the temperatures hold in the high 90s. If it didn't work this way, and a day was, say, 45 hours, that means the sun would be overhead like at noon for like 8 hours. Then half of what we call the Earth would be uninhabitable. Even that is perfect Goldilocks. I know the lower Baghdad or whatever in certain parts of the summer you push as 118 degrees and that sucks, man. The power is probably going in and out, and 5 years from now it'll probably be better than here. But at least now it's not that great. Parts of Yemen and but just at the right time, right before it starts to literally threaten life, that sun starts to go down and those temperatures will go down into the 80s. Just what a coincidence. Even that is, we have thousands of examples of perfect Goldilocks. Now, if you think the the eclipse itself, without anything else, proves this is a fake reality system. And that does not mean matrix. That does not, it could be a very natural system. It drives me crazy when a lot of smart people will generally agree with me that, yeah, this is some sort of simulation. It's not very real. And they'll always resort back to first grade thinking, in my opinion, on how it would have to work. This drives me crazy. I mean, I really, and these are smart people that do this. They'll say, well, you know, let's try to, explain with a first grade understanding why it seems like this reality system is breaking down, why there's so many glitches and so many strange things happening and Mandela effects and comical presentations. And then they'll go back, well, if a reality system is a matrix, the way a computer system works is it can, as more and more inputs go in, meaning the population gets larger, more and more scenarios, its processing power will be taxed. And it might have to take over here, and to accommodate this process, it might have to borrow some resources, some processing resources over here. And probably because it's being taxed, that's why the reality system is breaking down. So let me get this straight. There is no other explanation for a simulated reality system this incredible, this wondrous, than what you know about a computer. There's no other way it could be done. Nothing could possibly exist outside your human perception. I think that is so absurd. Um, I think that however this simulation is pulled off, however it is, let's say it is even in a remote way to what you know about computer processing and graphics cards. It's so wondrous. Do you really think it's ever going to have trouble with processing power? Come on. if it can do this, um, then it's not going to be at the edge of what it can do, and it's going to have to borrow resources. It would be like if you can whatever the latest version of The Sims is. If it can do that, is adding one more flower in the grass going to tax it? No, it would be a piece of cake. So I'm not even presenting that well. It's just there's obviously, guys, there's probably a million ways outside of our limited human perception while we're in this avatar how a reality system could be created outside of the limited notion of how processors work in a computer. So please leave that behind. I'm sorry. Um, anyway, so guys, please stay in the local bubble. Okay? Keep your focus, energy, and attention in the now moment, day by day. My predictions as to what they're going to do next. I'm done with it, completely done with it. That's giving that outer screen and that clown show energy and attention. Whatever happens, I'm gonna live day by day and stay as in my stay in that now bubble, that one reality bubble, as local as possible, not keep jumping. If you turn the news on, you're jumping to that outer bubble. You're jumping to the fringes of the screen. If every real soul and consciousness here would keep their energy locally, I think it would almost cease to exist, whatever that is on the outer fringe. So stay as local as possible, and always put it, the whole situation in the right perspective. If you feel if stress every day on all of us, I mean, we do have limitations in this avatar. It will always come back: stress, anxiety, worry, fear, etc. And the no fear? What did Nina Simone in that clip that I put over that soundbite? She says, "No fear. That's what freedom is to me." She says, "If I could have that half our life, if a human being could experience." I mean, she did it quickly on the fly in this interview. She said, "Yeah, that's freedom is actually about no fear. If I could have that half my life, but if we could have one day, experience one day." And probably we have as children. She does say children have no fear, but every day, just it's a limitation of being in this body, in this avatar. Fear, and which is no different than anxiety, worry. It's all tied. If we could experience one day without it, that would be something. So forget half our lives. We'll take that, but take one day. But what you can do is most people, they might be in a fight or flight state, or there's no difference. Fear, anxiety, worry, stress, they're all bundled into the same thing. They might have that 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day. That's why people turn to drugs and just, alcohol. And I'm doing too much of it. It's like, I got Penn State game's on early. Might as well just start drinking beer. And just like, I do it. I've got to cut my beer down. We all do it. We all have, um, we're not perfect in this avatar. We all can do better. But that's why, people turn to vices and to drink, to an escapism. We have to work on, we might every day have a fear moment. Again, we're not perfect here, but the idea is to get that type of energy that feeds the system loosh, to get it as little as possible, to catch it when it's happening, to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to worry about that. And if you're really stuck on how to do it, to me, the best way to do it is to back up. Just rise up out of your body, and you can all picture doing it right now. Look down from 100,000 feet. Look down from however high up you have to go. It's just you and an avatar down there in this ridiculous reality presentation that's completely broken down to a clown show level. And the only way that works, if you have to truly understand or believe, that word is completely trash. But can you jump right to knowing? Can you just jump right to just? I mean, sometimes you have to believe in something before a while, and then you investigate it and test theories before you know it, before it sinks in as knowing. So I don't think that the word belief is not such a horrible word to me. But you have to first believe this life is not all there is. I mean, that's the most important part. And I'm there. I mean, you just, this is, no matter who's right, no matter what happens at death, who's right, a lot of different opinions of what's going to happen. But I mean, there's no way that this is the atheists are right or this is the only thing we have. It wants you to believe that. Um, but once you realize that this life is just a train stop of, an infinite number on either side, then you can use that to rise up and look down and say, look at me down there being stressed out over this situation. And it's not good, but there's always ways to make chicken, that's not the greatest example, chicken salad out of chicken. There's always ways, I need something better than that. There's always ways to do it. There's always ways to do it. And it's a bad example, but Andy Dufresne, maybe it's a mini truth drop. They put him down in the hole, in the solitary confinement after um, he played the record. He per the record and what that the opera that he played the record. He says, Red says, I don't know what those two ladies were singing about, but I'd like to think it's something so beautiful that it can't possibly be understood. And the whole yard stopped and listened, and then Andy, by playing the record, there's so many truth drops in the Shawshank Redemption. That's why it's continuously, it's not just because it's a great movie. It's almost like the system has to play it on cable over and over and over again because it keeps having to present the truth. It's almost like that's how they'll use it for a get out of jail free card. They'll say, oh, we showed him. How many times did we play that Shawshank Redemption? We showed him that movie was just riddled with truth. It is, even the playing of the music. But what happens to Andy, he's, you know, Captain, what's Captain, I forget, Hadley. He's rapping on the window. You're mine now, Dufresne. He puts him in the hole, and then he gets out and he joins his buddies at lunch, and he says, easiest time I ever did. He looks like hell. He's been in solitary confinement for a week or whatever for playing the record. Easiest time I ever did. He's like, they let you tote that record player down there, Andy? It's like, no. Mr. Mozart gave me company. Mr. Mozart, Beethoven, Bach. It's all in here. It's all, they can't take that from you. Music, they can't take that from you. It's all in here. And another truth drop in Shawshank Redemption. The 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 most beautiful parts that you're allowed to latch on to, they can't take from you. No matter how bad the situation is in this world, if you're focused on the screen, and I understand, and again, people email me about they're about to lose their job. It's, of course, it, it's beyond anything we possibly could have imagined. But as you work back, I mean, we all, without a job, we have to eat, we have to put food on the table. Some of us have kids. I understand. I mean, it'd be hard to say maybe it's not stressful for you, Matt. I got it. I got it. But if you work back into smaller and smaller reality bubbles where it's just you sitting with your kid or your pet or me out in the back with the trees, they can't take that from you. Okay, that's why there's never would have completely broken all the rules. They want all the truth latching on to the endless presentations of the truth community about the FEMA camps and the plastic coffins. And come on. That's not, come on. Remember that stuff we all latched onto? And people would put out videos in 2011 and 2012 and 2013 about these endless trains of military. It would show a train with like 1,000 cars and all military equipment. And it was interesting. Like, how can you, if the, I'm assuming these videos are real, and the military does have that much. When a train goes by for like 20 minutes and it's like Humvee, tank, and of course the truth community was like, where are they taking them for the first FEMA camp? And Walmart's were going to be the FEMA camp. Guys, that's playing exactly into its hands. There are the creeps still. There's still a few rules they have to operate by here. And you know, if they want, human being needs to doom himself or herself. I absolutely 100% believe that if rap on the door, here's Hadley at my door, you're mine now, Matt. If they come in, the jackboots come in and they throw me down on the ground and they rent the movie for me, uh, I've won. I absolutely believe because studying this reality system up and down for 10 years, it is always ultimately about a human being having to do it to themselves or doom themselves. Um, I know there's some examples, the innocence of the loss of life that could be considered innocent, or is the 18-year-old that's thrown aboard a PT boat that's about to land on Utah or Omaha Beach for World War II and about to be mowed down. Was he really doing it to himself? Or there are those examples I struggle with, but usually, or 99 point whatever percent of the time. So I do believe there are still a few rules here. The jackboots come in, throw me down, and they just put that 13-inch TV up and they make me watch the movie, pin my eyes open like Clockwork Orange. Then I really believe I've won. What is that based on, Matt? Complete um, instinct, inner knowing, combined with studying how this reality system works. So let it fine. If you want to give me an instant win, screw with me like that. It's an instant win. And even, well, how do you know that? Because I said so. Because we have maybe inside this avatar we're very limited, but I think there's a place somewhere we're not so limited because I said so. It's that's just what I believe. It's I know that's impossible to prove, but stay as local as possible. Stay in the now moment. And the Lou Gehrig thing, remember I presented a few months ago. The Lou Gehrig, it's really helped me. There's nothing that I like to do more than, and I need to back up. Of course, many of you don't know what I'm talking about. Um, Lou Gehrig's presentation, his last game, or he came before he had, I guess, gone out for 3 weeks and hadn't played any games for the Yankees, and then he came back and gave the speech, and he says he's diagnosed with some unknown degenerative disease that eventually be called ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, of course. And he says, knowing that my career is over and I have some weird disease, he says, right now I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I believe that presentation, whether Lou Gehrig really did go through this, it doesn't matter. That presentation was a gigantic metaphysical reality truth drop, a message, a layered message to all that can pick up on it, a retrocausality message. And you can, I'm doing it every day and it works. It absolutely, Levette years ago started talking about how her life changed for the better when she would stop and do the appreciation every day, the appreciation. This is very similar. My cat Fifi Addy now will, as I'm sitting on the couch watching, I do watch movies at night, and I'll do watch some sports from now and again, some NASCAR, and I will watch college football. I won't watch the NFL or any professional sports or bums like Ben Simmons. I will never do that again. But she'll jump down onto my lap at this point. I mean, I couldn't even get you. I've made videos years ago. I'd walk up to her, she'd run. So I've done when she does that, I'll say, right at this moment, I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And what that really means is, are you at a point, or when I'm saying that, am I lying to myself? Am I being delusional? What that means is if somebody showed up, Glenda from The Wizard of Oz, and said, Matt, I can take you anywhere you want to go, and you can go right now. I'll grant your wish, and I'll take you wherever you want to go. I'll stuff a bunch of $100 bills in your pocket. You can go have fun and go. You want to go sit up on that block and look out over the Great Pyramid the way Jack Nicholson did and Morgan Freeman did in the Bucket List movie. Yeah, I'll take you there. Wherever. And when I'm if I'm saying if Fifi Addy's jumped on my lap and I'm saying this is amazing, where how far she's come, and I stop and say right about now I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That means there is nowhere else. And I assure you, when I say that, and I usually say that once a day, sometimes I've found reason to say it two, three times, four times a day, There's nowhere else I would rather be. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I mean, again, Glenda shows up. Whatever you want, Matt. I would be like, no. I mean, it's not that. There's a moment we all have where you see something in a certain way, or even understand something about yourself, or where you wouldn't trade it, and you'd say, right about now, I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth, and it's working for me tremendously. And I hope you have something like that. But it all relates to the greater theory of um, I mean, it all goes back to the same age-old themes of this reality, temptation, the same age-old themes. And it has to do with cutting ties to the temptations of this reality system. The reality system desperately wants to be believed in. It wants your energy. It wants your seven deadly sins. It wants your covet. So there's moments now where, I mean, I mowed the grass in August, and I don't know, it was a nasty 3 or 4 weeks. The humidity was Havana, Cuba. It was 90 some degrees. It wasn't much different than what Greg had, I'm sure, in South Carolina. Probably the humidity probably went all the way up to Vermont. It was nasty August, and I'm just dripping, mowing. The ragweed is coming up, and just being out because I'm usually too much in my cave here, and I need to get out more and walk more and do more stuff like that. But I was like, I did the Lou Gehrig moment, like when I'm dripping and gross. And the point of that is, if somebody shows up and says, I can take you anywhere you want to go, is there anywhere else you'd want to be? And I just say, no, no. There's the temptations of this world go down and down and down. I don't want, I don't care. By my heel, I care not. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than just with my sweaty hands on this mower. And I'm telling you 100%, I knew that, not just believe that. I knew that. And whenever that happens, I think this is cutting ties with this place, because it just can't tempt me at all anymore. And it's all related to cutting ties. So you have to work at this a bit. Just do your best. I mean, there's that one moment a day where you'll say, you don't have to do the Lou Gehrig thing. It's like, wow, right here in this moment, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I just saw things a certain way, or understood things a certain way, or yeah, I'm getting a little touchy-feely, experience something in nature. But this works for me, and I believe it's much more than that. I believe these are like metaphysical training exercises to cut ties, to cut your own Jacob Marley chains, and eventually it's a training ground here, guys. This is a training ground of some kind, and you get yourself to a point where there's no tricks that can work on you here. See through absolutely everything. Nothing can tempt you. Just there's nowhere you'd rather be than out sweating out back with grass all over your legs. And then all the training here someday will die. And if, like I said a video or two back, if there's any tricks there, well, why is there any reason to believe that the training we did here wouldn't translate to that? The opposite. Here we go again. I'm sorry. I don't talk to too many people. I have to talk about my father. But I don't know how it came up, but he was somewhat interested in the conversation. We started talking about death, and um, this is to me the reason why old people, all they do is talk about their ailments. And my dad's been doing it for 5 years. Not all old people, but all normie type old people, they just start talking about their ailments, and it's related to why my dad does. Because I found out, I'll just get right to the point. He has nothing. He has no belief system, nothing to fall back on. And I said, we've never talked about it, and I don't know exactly how it came up. And I guess we were talking about, well, I think I know how it came up. He's always saying, will you rent the movie for me? I'm worrying about it all the time, that you're out there exposed. I'm fully protected and you're exposed. I'm worried about you. Will you do it for me? Do it for me. What's it? It's like, no, I'm not going to say it, but I just said no. No, I'm not going to. I don't. There's a decision to make for myself. And so we started talking about, And I said, well, look, I don't worry about as much as I used to. I used to worry about everything when I was younger, and I still have work to do. But I was bad. I mean, I've gotten so much better. And I think I told Dad, I said, it just comes down to, it really comes down to if there's no fear of death, then what, if you back up far enough, what is there to worry about? Yeah, nobody wants to suffer for the remaining 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years, but if you have no fear of death, it should take away 90 some percent of all worry. And there's never going to be no fear of death. We are in the avatar, but you know what I'm saying. Get as close as you possibly can. And he's asked me a few questions about that. And then I'm like, well, you were raised a Catholic. I mean, what do you believe? And he, hasn't gone to church or doing it. And he said, there's nothing. I'm not, I've tried to go back to church and it doesn't really, it doesn't have any kind of connection with him. So he doesn't go. And, he hasn't really spent too much time looking into comparative religion or anything like that. But he basically says, I don't think there's anything. He has he has nothing. He really believes, and he just came clean with me. He's like, I think so I'm like, you basically believe in the atheist position that there's just nothing. He's like, yeah. So it makes sense to me. Well, if that is your underlying belief system, um, you are always going to just talk about your ailments and see, talking about your ailments and complaining and about talking about the next doctor visit and that is a way. It's a really desperate and pathetic way to hold on to this world or attach or to stay attached to it because I haven't thought this through, but it's not totally wrong what I'm saying. If you have one more doctor's appointment, then you're still alive. It's good to have that next doctor's appointment because it proves you're still alive. That's a pretty pathetic metric on how to live life and where you are, but maybe it's that simple. If I can get to the next doctor's appointment, I'm still alive. I don't know, but I think it is. I think somebody that no matter what your religion is or what your belief set is, if you truly have no fear of death for whatever reason, you might complain if you're every time you step down a stair, your knee is just jabbing pain or whatever, but you're not going to go out to lunch with your friends to just start trading ailment stories like the way these older people do. If you have no fear of death, you just wouldn't do that. I don't think. Um, but I think that's why they do it. So let me look at my list here, guys, to make sure I've covered everything. Um, I was looking at my list for a while, guys, so I turned it off. I pretty much covered everything. I'll wrap it up in the next few minutes. I don't know if I covered this. It's so important. I just want to say it one last time, or maybe I did or I didn't. But um, if I talk about going down the sliding scale as the years go by, noticing the reality system, the world isn't very real, and I keep putting my push pin more and more this way. It's important to note that there's never been a moment where I've said, well, wait a second, I think I've made a mistake here. Actually, yeah, the world is a little bit more real in all these areas here that I thought. The world is more real, at least in these areas. So I'm going to slide back the scale a bit. It never happens. It always goes this direction. So what does that tell you? It's very similar to once you start investigating truth, conspiracy, dropping veils, seeing through the lie. The notion of we never go far enough, which relates to two things. One is if we thought something was a little bit strange a year ago, the more we look at it, it gets weirder and stranger. It never goes back the other way, does it? We never go far enough. And that axiom has never been violated either. But it's also related to general investigation into the things we look at. Nobody's ever gone down these paths and said, well, yeah, I checked it out. You know what? Now, Matt, I'm going to go back to believing. I think I'm back to believing that CNN is completely real. Nobody goes back unless you're ready to, have an emotional breakdown and you just are. It's like a complete defense mechanism, like before a complete mental fragmentation, like multiple personalities. You're just going to go back and be quiet and pretend Anderson Cooper's real, and that's what you have to do to survive mentally. Okay, that's just a ridiculous radical defense mechanism. But nobody ever goes back. No one's like, I believed what you believed once, Matt, but now I'm interested in Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room. Nobody goes back. So it's the same I'd like to make a few jokes about that, but the video won't load. Nobody goes back. It's the same with this. Once you keep pushing your push pin back down towards it's not very real over here, it's not real at all, I don't think anybody's going to have a moment where like, yeah, I made a mistake and go back up the scale. So it's the same principles happening over and over again. And just end with this. The last time I wore the Milwaukee shirt, I think it was a pretty big topic we were discussing like this. And I always hope sometimes that the comments will move the discussion forward. These are pretty big topics. And can the comments move these, these, understanding ourselves, the metaphysical situation of this reality system? Can the comments help move everything forward? The comment was like, "Oh, Milwaukee, that's the ultimate city of racism." It's like, well, how's that moving the conversation forward? Like, even if it's correct, I mean, was there racism was Laverne and Shirley? Was that Milwaukee? The Schatz Brewery? Was that Milwaukee? I think so. That's where all crap beer came from Milwaukee for like 50 years. I guess they were in the Schatz Brewery. That's why they got the job. Two white women. But I was like, does that move let's say that's right about Milwaukee. How's that helping? How is that? Anyway, it just was funny. And related to that, guys, I'm going to talk. I watched, let me just, anybody, the video's over. If anybody wants to shoot the shit for a few more minutes. Um, I watched the Bee Gees. I'm gonna talk very near future more about retrocausality. The past can change, not just the future. I absolutely believe that at this point. More and more evidence continues to pour in, and this is kind of evidence for it. But I'm not prepared to. Again, I need to wrap this video up. So let me just present what happened. I was watching the Bee Gees documentary, and is it on? I think it's on HBO Max. It's not very good at all. I mean, it's fascinating time. I lived through that part of the 70s as a small child. I remember how big Saturday Night Fever was. I need to talk about this some other time because I'll do a whole video on this and that whole disco thing. Because I'm watching this, I just wanted to see how they got swept up in the disco movement because they started out making music like the Beatles, like almost like British Invasion. And anyway, so the documentary's not very good. Like an hour and a half into it, it starts talking about, and I watched that part, but then on the back end, it talked about the backlash of 3 years later was like disco sucks, and it was basically pushed primarily by this one major disc jockey in Chicago who was a disc jockey for a radio station called The Loop, and he said, everybody come to Comiskey Stadium. Was that the White Sox Stadium, I guess? The Cubs and the White Sox. Bring your disco albums and we're all going to blow them up after the game. Disco sucks. And if you bring a disco album, you'll see where I'm going with this in a second, guys. If you present your disco album or to the gate, you get in for 90 cents or whatever it was. So, and then they blew them up. And that was like ushering the era of disco sucks. And they talked about the Bee Gees couldn't get a job and all that. But anyway, they interviewed a guy who worked as a young man, a black guy, who worked as a young man at Kaminsky, and he's like, let me get this out because you'll see where I'm going with this. He was like, well, that day I remember people weren't just showing up with Bee Gees albums, disco and Boogie Oogie Oogie till you just can't boogie no more and all this disco crap. People were showing up with Stevie Wonder, and people were showing up with Marvin Gaye, and people were showing up with R&B and black artists, and they were wanting to blow them up, and immediately turned into a big R, a big R. It just inserted itself into the Bee Gees documentary, which had nothing to. And this documentary is pretty old. I mean, I think it's old. Most of the times they're interviewing these Bee Gees brothers haven't even been alive for how many years. So it's at least even the video clips, even if maybe they rearranged it and put it together recently, but almost all the clips are old. And I think even the documentary is a little old, but I'm not sure. So this just the R, the big, the big R ism inserted itself, or maybe Matt, don't not everything is a metaphysical retrocausality breakdown. I hear you. They simply what they did, Matt, is, and this is more likely. they do operate at the pedestrian level too. They simply they probably put out this Bee Gees documentary and then like inserted that part to drive home the message. Fascinating. So he says people were coming and they had the Stevie Wonder and the Marvin Gaye, and he says this was like a showing not against disco. This was a showing of racism. I'm like watching it going, really? And the more I think about it, if I didn't look into it at all, if I had to guess, they probably went back, dusted off the old Bee Gees documentary, rearranged it a bit, and inserted that because that message has to be inserted into everything at this point. I mean, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. People grabbed maybe the person that wanted to get in and see this big spectacle of Disco Sucks and it was going to be these huge crowds. They didn't have a disco album, so they grabbed whatever. They grabbed Uncle Fred's Stevie Wonder, or they grabbed Funk Railroad, or they grabbed whatever. They grabbed the Supremes or whatever. It wasn't about. Look, I don't have to prove it to you. Obviously, nothing about the Disco Sucks loop blow up the records thing had anything to do. But they went to this one. Oh yeah, I was I worked at Kaminsky Park, and they were showing up with R&B albums, and these like supremacists were coming. I mean, they had to turn it into that. Incredible. Now, I noticed how unnatural that was, and I'm trying to come up with the most basic explanation here. I think the simplest is correct. It's nothing, something. There's no interdimensional aliens that came in and did anything. It's just simply they in some way they found a way to insert this back into the documentary and then re-release the documentary. But people, it's incredible. People around us would just see that as a normal part. All of this the race presentation that's so forced to us, so unnatural, so it's a square peg shoved through a round hole, a square peg shoved through a round hole at every turn where it doesn't. I'm expecting at some point, I don't know, be a retro causality or what. I'm expecting to put on my old DVD of A New Hope, Star Wars One. Where'd that come from? A New Hope. We're like, that was never associated with, if you're around age 50 or older, that was never associated with the original Star Wars, A New Hope. Anyway, I'm not saying it's a retro causality or anything. I'm not going there. Um, but it's just like if I go back and put in my old DVD of which I'm glad I have an old DVD maybe Greedo, maybe no, maybe Han actually does shoot first in my old one. I have to check that out. But if I'm watching something that's been in my house for over 20 years and there's a racial element inserted into Star Wars, I don't think anything would surprise me at this point. I'd chalk it up to some sort of retro causality or Mandela effect or something. It wouldn't if there's a scene in Empire Strikes Back where Lando Calrissian is in some way at odds with the Cloud Sea administrators because he's feeling he's being kept back. Wouldn't surprise me. Just, yeah, that's what the reality does. So I should go. Actually, I need to put in and watch my new Hope, which we thought was one, but was three or four. I guess that's all I don't want to get too conspiratorial. This is weird enough as it is, this video, but um, I'm going to see what the hand shoots first scene because that's evolved several times over the years. And was it Jeff and Etta and the late cat Phil? Our best goes out to Phil, Jeff and Ed and the late cat Phil. Who's the other cat? Sorry, Jeff. He sent to me about a year ago. Go watch the current version of Han shoots first. Han doesn't shoot first because that's not politically correct. And Greedo yells out like McGlinky, McGlinky or McGlinchy, McClinky. I think right before Greedo shoots first because it would be politically incorrect for somebody like me, somebody like Han, someone of that uh, background to shoot first, and you have to have Greedo. Well, wait a second. Yeah. Well, Han then has to act in self-defense, but Greedo yells out as he shoots. McClinky. McClinky. What's what's that all about? Anyway, guys, last thing. I know I'm getting way too long here, but um, I'm gonna need, I don't I can't talk about it too much, but it's my favorite topic of all time, how Star Wars is made bad on purpose. And when I talk about it again, if I ever talk about it again, the moment you know that it was set up 25 years ago to be destroyed. Is it any different than the WTC built built Ford Tough to be eventually? They knew on the day they broke ground that it would, and maybe that's the same. Are you saying that when they originally made the first three Star Wars, they knew then that the first day it was released in the theater in 77, they knew then their job would be to destroy it on the back end? Yeah, probably. Because what gives it away is that scene when they I remember where I was living in Los Angeles, so I could tell you when they released. Remember they re-released Star Wars into theaters, but there were like 5 clips of the super high-tech animation or special effects. So they re-released everything. It was a complete letdown. It was horrible. I think that this is part of destroying it, part of how they destroy it. It was in the third one, um, which is it takes place with the Ewoks and what is that called? Return to the Jedi. And in Return of the Jedi, there's that scene in Jabba's palace when Luke is there and Han's blind and they're in prison, whatever, and Luke's about to fight the Rancor, where there's that you know what I'm gonna go that music that all the little animated characters have that music video, and it's cringe-worthy bad. I mean, it's you know what I'm not going to try to imitate it. I'm not going to try to imitate it. The characters, the special effects are awful. Um, the song is awful, and it took me. I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago where I pointed to that moment. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before. You can point to that moment when they absolutely had to know they were going to destroy Star Wars on purpose. So these re-releases came out in the theater. I remember I was in LA. It had to have been 96 or 97, maybe 20th anniversary. Maybe it was 97. That makes more sense. And I went and I saw, we were big fans still. I saw two of them, I guess, in the theater with this meds intern who was in from Germany, lived across the hall from me, and he wanted to go. So we saw two at two different locations. And when I saw the that music video in Return of the Jedi, it was cringeworthy then. But looking back now, um, that was the moment when you knew they were out to destroy it because there's no way, if anybody's not following me, there's no way that that would ever make it into George Lucas would be like, sure, that's good enough. We'll go with that. The characters are horrible. The special effects are horrible. They look Roger Rabbit characters look better. The song's horrible. It's cringeworthy. There's no way that George Lucas would be like, yeah, I like that. We're gonna do that. It's just it's somebody called George. We have something you need to put in, and it's time to destroy your baby. It's time to destroy Star Wars. I gotta put that in. George, you gotta, this is the dark system calling. You gotta play by the rules. At the end of the day, there'll be a $4 billion check for you, that is another reality breakdown. He should have got 20 billion from Disney, but there's no possible way George Lucas would have put that in. So the point is, you can point back to 97, all the way back to 97 as a moment when we knew that they knew that the franchise was out to be destroyed on purpose. Um, you know, I mean, if you haven't seen that music video, I was going to say go see it, but you don't want to see it. It's that bad. Thanks, guys.